And the last time it happened was when Israel recaptured Jerusalem in 1967 and 1968. And when I saw that, it was like, oh, good grief, this is supernatural. And so I go running back and I look at the next date, and it was right after Israel became a nation in 1948. It happened in 1949 and 50. And so now my mind's reeling, so I have to go back, and I got to do some more research. And I'm going back, and I find out it happened during the Inquisition, 1492. When Columbus sails the ocean blue, because they expelled all the Jews on the 9th of Av, and also in Portugal in 1493, 1494, what happens, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella are taking all the Jewish wealth, but that is what helped finance the finding of the New World and all the Jews coming over to America.
So in your opinion, if the Jews hadn't been expelled, and Christopher Columbus, who is Jewish, and you told me also there were a number of his crew that were Jewish. Why? Because they had to leave Spain. They might not have founded America.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. And you know what? As I went back further, at the destruction of the temple in 70 A.D.
That's going way back.
Way back. Solar lunar eclipses all over the biblical holidays. And then during the time of Messiah's death, 32, 33 A.D., solar lunar eclipses all over the biblical holidays.
We have this Tetrad, the 4 blood moons. And the last one, which will happen next year, will be the most unusual that ever has occurred in history. In fact, we don't even have any more of these tetrads scheduled that occur on feast days for over 400 years after that. Why is it so unusual, Mark?
Well, have you ever heard of a supermoon? When the moon is at its closest point to Earth, it's called its perigee. All right? Well, if the moon is a new moon at perigee, at its closest point, you don't even see it. But if the moon is a full moon at its closest point to Earth, according to NASA, it looks 14% larger. It's this big supermoon because it's so close. Well, guess what? Next year, on September 28th, we not only have a full moon, we have a supermoon that is at its closest point to Earth, not just for the month, but for the entire year. And it's a super blood moon that is going to be seen in Jerusalem on the Feast of Tabernacles and in a Shemitah year.
No, what's a Shemitah year?
Now, the Shemitah year is every 7th year.
Jubilee.
Every 7th year, the land had to rest, and it couldn't be tilled. In the Shemitah year, in the 7th year, specifically on the Feast of Tabernacles, it says in Deuteronomy, every man, woman, child, and even the stranger has to be there to hear the King of Israel read from the Scriptures.
What is going to happen?
Well, here's one thing that I think. In the book of Joel you mentioned, where it talks about the sun turning to sackcloth and the moon to blood, it's in the same context that God says he's going to judge all the nations who are trying to divide the land of Israel. And that's what's going on right now. And America is leading the push to divide the land of Israel. And I think these are the heavenly billboard warning signs by God to Israel not to divide their land. It's also that America should not partake. But here's the other thing. We see a war in 1948, a biblically prophetic war. We see a biblically prophetic war in 67. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think there's a good chance we could see a biblically prophetic war in Israel because there are several that haven't taken place yet. But guess what else? That 7th year is an economic reset year. That is when all the debts were to be forgiven and the people released. But in Nebuchadnezzar's day, they had set the people free, and then they changed their mind and put them all back into bondage. And God said, because of that, this 7th year is going to be a year of judgment. And the 7th year has been a year of judgment. And do you know, in 1994, do you remember the Shoemaker-Levy comet, when it got pummeled 21 times, okay? That was a Shemitah year. And guess what weekend it happened on? The 9th of Av, which is the time when the temple was destroyed twice. And so I thought back in 1994 that meant with 21 fragments that the 7 times 3 is 21. The next 3 Shemitah years are going to be times of judgment. And 2001 was a Shemitah year, or the 7th year. And that's when the Dow fell its biggest drop ever to that time, and it fell on Rosh Hashanah, the first day of the 7th month. It fell 7%.
Tell me the next drop.
The next one is 2008, when the big stock market crash happened. Guess what? That was the Shemitah year. It happened on the first day of the 7th month. The Dow fell 777 points. It was
no, you're making that.
No,
it did. I saw it. It really did.
Yeah.
Now listen. How many more signs do you need? This is your moment to make Jesus your Messiah and Lord.